A very warm welcome to you all. Those of you following the channel will know that while there has been a gap in the videos that I've been producing on the subject, our Africa Landcruiser build continues. It is, of course, our troop carrier being built by Paul Marsh and his crew in Cape Town. It's a vehicle with just under 500,000 kilometers on it, and we started that build in February this year, 23. That video series continues now, and I'm going to start with a discussion between Paul and I on the parts that we fitted. This project was made possible by Terrain Tamer. Now, Terrain Tamer is an Australian company building high quality parts, components, accessories for four-wheel drives, and they have an office in Cape Town, and they contributed a lot of spare parts to this build. Following this video, there will be several, including Paul and I discussing the interior build, and my favorite, the reveal of the color. You're going to have to wait a little bit for that one. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to follow this fantastic series. I am planning to go next year early to go and see the vehicle, but I will be bringing you regular updates as we complete this stunning vehicle build. You won't be disappointed with the way this vehicle looks. On with the show. I am Andrew St Pierre White, explorer, overlander and broadcaster with over 40 years driving 4x4s in association with the Overland Workshop, online training for overlanders. All of the bits that we have taken out of the troop carrier and replaced with new parts, here they are here. And we're going to explain to you why we replaced each one, a little bit about the condition of each one, and when we did replace a part, why we replaced that part. These are... So we rebuilt the gearbox.
Gearbox and transfer box. So there were a number of components that were obviously supplied in the Terrain Tamer kit, like bearings and seals. And we had a couple of gears. This needed to be changed.
Why do you think that needed to be changed as one example?
Well, when Elric tested it, there was a lot of play in the gearbox when we go back on this particular gear.
Right.
So, you know, he's got to weigh up, you're putting new parts in the gearbox, you're obviously trying to get all the tolerances back to where they should be.
Yeah.
You're putting new bearings in,
yeah.
And if the gear's got a lot of excessive wear and play,
right.
like in particular when he was looking at it, the fifth gear was quite badly worn. Now there's some common, how would you say, wear and tear parts in that gearbox which are not as strong as normal, and those are the parts that either get upgraded, which Terrain Tamer did a good job of supplying the kit and those extra bits.
Yes.
And of course all the bearings, needle roller bearings, gaskets, seals.
Right.
Now not every gearbox needs this extent of work doing to it. I mean the Troopy gearbox is not maybe as strong as the 80 series gearbox, or you know, some of the stronger gearboxes. Quite often on the lower mileage vehicles we'll pull it apart. There might be a few wear and tear items. Often, you know, you'll see the flanges on the transfer box. These are often worn. The lip here where the seal runs wears. So, you know, those get changed. But for the rest, often it's pull it apart, check it, put gaskets, put seals in, make sure everything's in good working order, put it back together. But again, as we know, this builds the confidence in.
Sure.
We did a whole kit, and we did basically a major rebuild on the gearbox.
Yes, to be honest.
No, I mean this gearbox, you know, you drove this car down from Johannesburg and you were very comfortable with the gear change and how it drove, and there was nothing glaringly wrong.
Nothing.
But I do think that that's not a true indication of what you find inside the box when someone professionally looks at it.
Yes.
So, you know, like the fifth gear is often a letdown if that play on it.
Yes.
So it might have been good now. And if someone was doing weekends and short distance drives, maybe leave the gearbox, pull it apart, check it.
Yes.
But because you plan on long trips remote by yourself,
right,
we want that reliability. We also rebuilt your diffs, remember?
Yes.
And in doing that, pulling the diff apart with the high mileage, we all agreed that we would pull the bearings apart, change all the bearings.
Yes.
Now, you know, if I look at the bearings, if you look in the shells, it's hard to see in the light. But you'll see it's not a smooth surface in the sense that you can see there's a little bit of indentations, It's like the shine has been taken off on every second spot, and it's not as clean as I'd like the surface to be. And of course, once the surface changes color, it sort of goes off the bright shininess. You're starting to get wear. Often on the rollers you'll see they go brown, blue, if there's really excessive wear. This has done good mileage. I mean, they could still probably run, and you know, but if I feel that, I can feel it's a little bit, it's not smooth.
Right.
Okay, which says that the surface is not perfect. You know. And good call at that mileage to actually pull the diffs apart, spend the money on the bearings, change all the seals, took out the collapsible spacers, and we put solid spacers in. More work for the guy building the diff, but in the long run this makes it much easier to change a seal if you have to change a pinion seal that's leaking. Take off, bolt off the flange, fit the new seal, bolt it up again, lock it, and it's done. Whereas with this, it's a tricky one to get right. Most people in a bush repair or in workshops who haven't rebuilt diffs don't get this tension correct, the preload on the front bearings.
Okay.
So really what we're doing is a couple of small improvements, especially on the gearbox, and on the diffs, definitely some improvements by putting that solid space in. And again, reassurance, reliability. We'll put diff breathers in, obviously the oil and new that, so that's all good. So yeah, happy with that. Glad we.
Excellent.
It's always a big expense when you look at a gearbox and diffs and the drive line, but remember that works the hardest. Your springs, your shocks, your diffs, the transfer box, the prop shafts. And we took your prop shafts, we had them sent off to a specialist engineering company.
Yes.
They fitted new universal joints, new sliders, and they balanced the shafts again. So that takes out any vibration, which is often a cause to some of the damage. You know, people will fix.
So for example, the one part that was leaking was the front pinion oil seal from the front gearbox oil seal.
Yeah, on the transfer box. There, yeah.
That could be caused by an off-balance prop shaft. Could that
Well,
contribute?
I guess there are a lot of things, but when a prop shaft's worn and not balanced, and that's part-time four-wheel drive. So you know, you want to use the four-wheel drive system. People don't always use them, and if you put freewheeling hubs on, then everything sits still. So it's always a good idea that when you've got a truck that you're doing a lot of high mileage and you're changing universal joints, or you're looking at any wear on the sliders, or taking a prop shaft out, and you actually take the yokes and you rotate them in your hand. Because if you test a prop shaft universal joint in place, you don't always get the true sense of how worn it is, because you can only grab the flange and you can grab the prop shaft and you twist them and try and feel if there's any play. When you take the whole prop shaft out, you can rotate it and feel those universal joints. Now, universal joints only wear out because they don't get greased. And people take them to the workshops, the guys don't have quite the right grease nipple for the grease gun, they can't get the angle, it's painful because you've got to rotate the prop shafts, they don't do it. So it's really important that when you take your car for service, make sure the guy greases the prop shafts properly. You see the old grease is squeezed out, you can clean it off, you can check that black grease is clear and it's come through, and you know they're greased properly, then you never wear them out, they last. So anyway, that was the big component, big expense, but hey, done.
Yes.
Let's look through some of the other parts.
Okay.
Oh, shite.
More parts.
More parts.
Okay.
You don't actually realize how many parts got changed on your car.
Until I saw them spread out. No.
I mean, if we look, we've probably got another 10 of these trays.
Yeah.
The guys have stripped stuff down and changed them. So going through the front axle,
front diff,
the front swivels on the end of the
swivels.
housing.
Okay.
So this is quite common. You've got a rubber, you've got a steel, you've got a rubber seal, and you've got the felt seals, and basically it's keeping the CV joint sits inside the axle there.
Yes, and keeping
you're keeping it all clean.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what I find is the little bearings, the small bearings that sit on the top and bottom, that's what actually allows the wheels to pivot left and right, but they wear quite considerably, especially on hard roads, and they don't turn too much, so they literally stay in a straight line.
Yeah, they just turn that tiny bit.
So they get knocked out.
Yes.
And you'll find that when you take the bearing and the shell, I'm not sure if we've got the shell here, and you put them together and you rotate them, you'll find that it's not cheap. So it's always a good idea when we're going to do this type of work, we'll always pull the axle completely apart. That means we are changing these seals. We're definitely going to change these bearings. We will pull the wheel bearings apart and inspect them. again, checking for coloration, checking for wear and tear. We'll also look at the stub axle and understand, this one here has had a bit of heat come through it. It's a bit worn, and quite often the bearing spins on this.
So we put in terrain tamer replacement stub axles with the heavy duty oil seal.
So you've got a lip seal which runs on this edge here. Now if you feel here, it's very sharp. Okay, so what normally happens on these stub axles, dirt climbs in behind the seal. The seal and the grease make nice grinding paste, and it grooves this seal part here, and then of course,
which it did a bit on the back axle, a little bit,
and on the fronts too. So then of course you find that clamp comes into the grease. People don't renew the grease on the bearings often enough, or if they've been through doing a lot of mud driving. Okay, you've been through thick mud in that, you don't wash all the dirt and mud out from your front wheels and brakes and back brakes especially, it gets worse, and then you need to do more rigorous maintenance. So if we've driven on a trip, we've done a lot of, let's say, water crossings and been through some muddy sections and that, I will definitely come back and just as a matter of course have the wheel bearings pulled apart. So again, I can save the stub axles, check the seals, we'll put new seals in, check the bearings, they'll probably still be okay, new grease, repack them, retension them, and they run for another trip. So it depends on, a mileage is one way of checking bearings, how much mileage have I done? And another way would be to say, what trip have I just done? Where has the vehicle been? How much water have I been through? If I've done a lot of sand driving, my pressures on my tyres have been really low. The sand creeps in between the sidewall, the bead and the rim, and of course eventually eats away. And again, come back, pull the tyres off, clean them out, rebalance them. It's putting that preventative maintenance in before you head off back on the trip, giving you back that confidence. Here's another part we changed, the slave cylinder. I mean, this is still working perfectly, okay? This is one weak point, and I've seen many times where the slave cylinder's leaked. And you get dirt and dust that climbs in between the seal, maybe this dust seal breaks, and before you know it, that little seal in there gives up. And within a few strokes of the clutch, you've lost all the brake, all the clutch fluid. You've got no clutch.
Happens to me with a Range Rover after driving in a silicon quarry.
There we go.
Incredibly,
again, corrosive. So, as a matter of course, this is something we change. It's done the mileage. We don't know the condition. We could pull it apart, and if you were carrying spares, I wouldn't carry all this weight. I just carry a seal kit, because you can pull it apart, put a new seal in, and it will normally sort itself out. But if you've never changed it, it might be corroded and pitted inside, and then you can't really do much.
Yes.
We've gone and changed all tire ends here, and you'll look and see, normally this is the rubber boot you look at for wear and tear. Again, dirt climbs in there and it damages. Sometimes these get damaged when the guys pull them apart, but this rubber is tired and they often crack and perish.
Yes.
So it's a steering component. You never compromise on it. And you also got to find they're greasable. People don't always grease them, and you can't. It's not completely worn. It's stiff and tight, which means it's very dry in there. The grease hasn't been greased for a long time. But if it had to snap or break, it's disastrous. So again, you get varying qualities of components like this, and this is what you've got to be careful of when you go and buy parts. Buying cheap doesn't always mean it's a good part. And when it's something that's safety critical, like steering components, never compromise on the quality. Buy a reputable replacement part that you can trust. So we've gone and changed all the hoses. Now, if I look in this hose, there's a definite layer of calcification inside there. Okay, and you can see. And generally with hoses like this, if it gets really bad,
but it's not particularly bad.
Not bad.
And sometimes they get crispy if they start crackling as you squeeze them.
You crunch them and all the bits full.
They're in
and that of course blocks up the radiator, goes into the water pump and that. So it's a tired hose. I would never risk it. We put new hoses on if you wanted to carry a spare hose. Generally, if I fitted new hoses, I don't carry many hoses spare because they're brand new. I trust them, I put them on properly with good clamps. You're unlucky if you blow a hose, then it's often as a result of something else that was wrong. So, I'm trying to fit parts and not carry all the spares for the car. But again, we've done those. We did change your cam belt. Now, there's always a question, it's a Toyota cam belt, which is good, okay. People you've got to change them on a certain mileage. Okay, so you get your 150,000, and the light will come on.
Yes.
Again, if the light comes on, it's not related to the belt. It's normally triggered by the odometer.
Yes.
Often the mileage is not really due, but the belt is old. So it's sitting there. If I had to feel it, it's quite tight. Sometimes they get cracked. It's hard. You don't know the history of this belt. We don't know how old it is. We don't know how good it is. But it hasn't done the mileage. Well, in your case, it has done the mileage. It definitely will have been changed. We don't know when. It's a critical belt. If this belt snaps, goodbye engine.
Yeah.
So we're not going to take a risk.
Bent valve's probably
broken. I mean, it's a problem.
Badly broken engine.
Yeah. So you never want to risk that, especially on that particular engine. Any cam belt. So again, good quality cam belt. Change everything. You're going to change the tensioners. I mean, this is not finished. It's still good. But the point is, you put the whole kit in, you know, and then you'll have the other components. So generally, on a cam belt, you get a complete kit. And to get good quality, important, especially for that safety critical item. So I've seen people compromise. We've gone and they've changed, obviously, the handbrake shoes.
Yeah.
Now, Terrain Tamer do a very nice upgrade on the handbrake shoes. And the handbrake,
Right.
I don't know if you've seen that, but
No.
it comes together as a beautiful kit, and it actually makes the handbrake more efficient. By the way, it actually is designed with the levers to make the handbrake work better. So I love that, because the number of times I get into a cruiser and there's no handbrake.
Landcruisers
They are not the best for handbrake. So yeah, I mean, obviously the handbrake shoes are not completely finished, but they're pretty worn, and we've put new drums on for the brakes. So we've upgraded the brake discs.
Yes.
And done the handbrake shoes and upgraded that system. So I'm very happy that you should have a good handbrake.
The brakes and the handbrake work very well indeed.
Yeah. And, you know, again, with time, you will check the adjustment as you get to each service. You'll check make sure that the shoes are in good condition. So when the guys do a service, they don't just look. You know, check the handbrake shoes. Take the caliper off, check the handbrake shoes. Is it working properly? Is it adjusted properly? Are the brakes good? The back, especially the back brakes on cruisers. It's a small brake pad, and quite often we find once it hits mud, the rear brakes, the pads wear out very quickly. And I'll show you why. So
Yes,
traditionally a brake, this is the replacement brake pad for the rear.
Yes.
Okay, and they bevel it more often not to try and stop squealing and noise. But equally the mud gets trapped in there. And we've had a lot of the higher companies especially, you know, they want to get the best value on, it's expensive to change brakes all the time. And they run them too far, metal to metal, and then you throw the disc and the pad away, and you're having to replace the discs again. We found by using the brake pad, I think it's from the Prado, it doesn't have this bevel, so the mud doesn't collect as much. It doesn't mean it's not going to wear, it just reduces the wear time.
Yeah.
But the important part is that you wash the brakes out. If you've gone through a lot of mud, take a hose, rinse, get all the mud away from the brakes, the back of the bearings, everything, so that you can get all that mud away. Mud is terrible for a car, as is water, you know. I saw a great video of some guys in water, and they're driving, and the guy was a bit confident, and he pulled to the side, and of course his whole car went in. Now, that water in the car, on an overland vehicle, it's the worst thing you do so much damage. So when, you know, understand how to look after your car, you sure as hell don't want to go through water that's going to end up that severe. So yeah. Anyway, brake pads, we've changed the brakes, we've upgraded the brakes, we've also changed the brake hoses.
Right, you talked about the braided grip. Now tell me the advantages of braided brake hoses.
So as brake hoses get tired, it's a very strong, you know, rubber hose here, and it's reinforced, but there's still a bit of give in there. Okay. So when you're pushing the brakes down, what I found braided brake hoses do is they sharpen up the brakes, which is quite nice. So you feel the brakes sharper. There's less give.
And give in
there's less give in the hose. Right. It's a stronger hose. So it's almost, you know, without having a metal pipe, which is your strongest, you've got a flexible.
Yes, it's all metal.
It's a flexible braid on the outside,
on
which
that
gives
piece
a lot of
that goes
strength.
to the actual wheel itself, hub itself.
So you actually really, it's a much stronger flexible hose. But yeah, anything we can do to improve the braking of the vehicle is essential. So that's where I spend my money. You know, I need to stop if it's a problem. So good quality tires, good suspension to control the car, and good brakes to stop the car. Very important. You know, I don't know all these parts, but you've got more parts and more parts. So are you getting the picture of how much we've actually changed on this car? No, it's a lot.
Still more.
There's more parts too. I think
Viscous.
this is the Viscous fan. This is actually this wasn't too bad. You know, this was still very good.
I don't think that was looking at the schedule of maintenance that I could find.
It was.
That's not original.
It's not original,
Yeah.
but it's also it was changed at some stage.
Yes.
Okay. So I can't tell you, but most important would be it's a critical cooling component. And
But how would you tell if it was worn out and ready to be replaced? What's the diagnostic
so you can
way?
feel it, and also the fan needs to lock up. So you know the viscous coupling, as the fan speeds up, it locks up. Now, what we often do when we upgrade some of the engine conversions, we open this up and we put a bit more oil in. It's got a special oil inside here. Now, I've had scenarios where the viscous fan is actually, you know, it spins and there's absolutely, you
Yes.
can feel there's no
There's
resistance.
no
So this has got some resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, it's got oil inside here, and actually as it speeds up, it gets stiffer and stiffer to create the more effective cooling. I've had to drill this and actually bolt it so that we could lock it up and make it
Have a
efficient.
fan that was
have a fan that worked. Anyway, you have a new one, which is good.
Okay.
Again, the cooling system, and we spoke about it. We've changed the radiator. The radiator actually was still in good condition.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't rotten out. We could actually have reused that radiator. You were given the Terrain Tamer one, which is a better radiator with a nice feature of a little low warning sensor. You know, when you lose water in the engine, the risk is, do you catch it in time, and often you don't.
By the time the thing says hot, it's
Yes.
often too late.
It's too late, yeah. So you've done damage.
Yeah.
So to have a little sensor that can warn you, hey, the water's dropped, it's a bit low, is fantastic. you
Yeah,
know.
it's good.
So yeah,
Good idea.
again, you know, maintenance checking. I had one client, and had he done his morning check to see that the water was low, actually I think the mice had eaten one of the pipes, and his overflow bottle was empty, and something wasn't right. He drove the car, he overheated it. All he had to do is lift the bonnet that morning, and he would have found the problem. Radiator didn't have enough water in, and the overflow bottle was empty. Cost him a new engine. Expensive. Because he didn't do a daily check.
Yeah.
So, you know, the further you are away, the more critical when you've just had a lot of work done on the car, because you're going to help the workshop who's done all that work check, test, and look for any signs of possible problems, and then
Yeah.
bring it back again before
Yeah.
you do your big trip,
Yeah.
and just another check.
Yeah.
You know, you can pick up so much when you look through the car.
Yeah.
You know, I always look for stuff. Look for a bolt that maybe is not tight, a hose clamp that maybe needs to be nipped up, something, just so you can see and get
Yeah.
used to that.
Yeah.
We also changed the water pump. Again, we don't know the history on this water pump. We found a bit of sediment in the corner there. You know, I don't want to repeat what we said, but basically it's a critical component and painful to change in the bush, because the cam belt's got to come off and you've got to fit the water pump. So if you know the water pump's done, the cam belt's done, it's one big job that you don't have to worry about in the bush and shouldn't let you down. So, you know, again with antifreeze, coolant, new hoses, new radiator cap, new thermostat,
Yeah.
we've done.
These are hoses.
Yeah, we changed all the hoses. So we went through the whole engine and changed the hoses.
That's for the rear.
This was interesting.
Rear shock.
Well, what's left of it. So, you know, your U-bolts,
Yes, U-bolts, the axle, yeah.
you know, hold the springs to this. But if you have a look here,
So that's-
you can see
no,
how
that's bad.
worn that is.
Wow, that's bad. That's
So
really worn.
it's had a shock bush there, and often what happens, dirt, maybe, you know, it's had no lubrication, dirt climbs in there and it wears away, and of course without being checked, it eventually just breaks off, and suddenly you've got a rattling shock, which is not great. These bolts can work loose, so often that's something to check. Bushes, yeah. I mean, you can see how the bushes have delaminated the rubber against
Yes.
the metal.
Yes.
Okay.
These are
That's
the
fine.
these are the front radius arm bushes.
And you know, you would expect that to be the case. We've also fitted cast correction bushes.
Yes.
so that helps. And yeah, I mean, bushes are part of wear and tear. So if you've done a massive big trip, depending on what quality bush you've used, there's always a big debate on what bush you shouldn't use. The most important, whatever bush you're choosing, is that you maintain it. Actually take the bushes apart. If you're looking at the rear shackle bushes on leaf springs, at a certain time, pull it all apart, check it, check actually that everything is not worn out like we've just seen here, but the bush is not collapsed, because on your ones the bushes are collapsed on the actual on the leaf springs.
Rear leaf springs, they were in pieces. They were a real mess.
Yeah. So again, you know,
I saw that when I drove out. I saw it and I thought, okay, well, it'll knock a bit, and it hardly knocked at all. And yet they were in bad shape. Yeah, they were. But you had no weight in the car, and you were driving down, so you know that you should never drive with that. I mean, that's again that one. So what I'm seeing here, you know, is mostly components from the axles, the gearbox, the engine side. We've done the water pump, the cam belt. We've done the idler pulley for the aircon tensioner, which is a common Achilles heel. Again, people take belts, they adjust them too tight, they get squeaky, they get old, they get hard, and people just adjust it tighter and tighter to stop it squealing, and you just put more and more pressure on the bearings. So if you rather put a new belt will be adjusted, and it may need one adjustment after that because it's just stretched. I use good quality belts, and always on the alternator side there's 2 belts, and they should come in as a matched pair. So my experience has been you buy Toyota original belts.
I found them to be the best.
I've had problems with my 1HZs with belts, and it's always been wrong belt, right size, wrong belt. So the actual angle is slightly
not right,
so it's tight, but it still doesn't grip. It squeals. And so I kind of learned that lesson. Just go and buy Toyota belts.
The same is if we absolutely, I agree with you 100%. You know, Toyota's parts, some of them are absolutely worth spending the money on, and you've got to know the safety critical. There are other component parts that people make, but if you speak to a company who does a lot of work on a daily basis to service and fix cars, they're the guys who are actually going to tell you that part's not good. We change that all the time, and that really works. And this is not a good brand, but that's an okay brand. You know, when we rebuild engines, we'll only use genuine Toyota gaskets and seals. It doesn't mean to say there are not aftermarket seals that don't work.
But you know.
But when you speak to the engineers and they go, we've paid that price and those school fees, I'm not doing it again. So when I use that, I know I've got peace of mind. So yeah, a lot to be said for that. So I think with all the parts that have been changed, you have gone and you have tested your car and done a couple of thousand kilometers?
No, it's about 1,000.
About 1,000
give or take 1,000.
Okay.
And I've got a very squeaky clutch pedal.
Yeah, we put that in there on purpose.
No, you didn't, because it's got a lot worse. Apart from that,
good.
Nothing.
Fantastic.
It's the motor's sweet.
Yeah, she was a good motor. I think we're just, you know, when you start a 1HZ, it starts on the key. There's no smoke. There's no back pressure. There's no obvious signs of oil leaks. She sounds sweet. It runs. That car
sounds right. That motor sounds right.
Yeah.
It just has a really nice note about it.
Yeah.
And the motor's sweet. I'm very happy with the motor. And now we've replaced all the bits that.
Yeah, and you know, I think
in a way we've got a brand new car. Now we just got to fix the body and the doors. The doors are still dodgy, very dodgy. So you're going to bring your body guy in to come and do some bodybuilding on it and get that.
Well, the important part on that is to look and say we've got a great vehicle. You can get away with body work. You know, the doors we could fix. We could replace locks, we could get the door seals changed, we could make sure any bits of trim that they work, especially the switches, because they often, you know, take wear and tear, corroded underneath. But I think at some stage we're going to do a bit more than that to the body.
Oh, I think so.
We might just.
I think
we're going to give some thought.
The minimum is to stop the rattles and get the doors aligned and closing and open cleanly, especially the back door. But make it look nice.
Yeah, I think, you know, at the end of the day, you want to make the car look good. We know the chassis is good. We know if for a few adjustments on doors, it had a bit of body work done on it, nothing untoward that looked terrible. So whatever was repaired well.
Yeah.
And I think that gave us a lot of confidence, which is really good. So yeah,
those are not original, obviously. Do you think these look like originals, don't they?
If they are, they would have been changed a few times over.
A 500 pound. They're not terrible, actually.
No,
They're not.
I mean,
they're not loose.
No.
So
if anything, you'd look at the shock absorber. It's not leaking oil. The bushes are still good.
Reasonable. Yeah.
It's not broken.
Yeah.
You could take this as a spare. One front, one rear spare.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. That's actually okay.
So there we go. We're looking at saying if we had to take some spares, if I was going to drive through Africa, I may consider taking one front and one rear.
Right.
Okay? And if I was taking the front shock, I would definitely look at the bushes and probably put new bushes on.
Just fit them on there.
Or sometimes,
spare,
and sometimes just spare bushes if you're not taking shocks.
I always carry spare bushes.
Yeah, worth doing. Carry
a few
shock bushes.
Steering
damper. I mean, these are okay, but we've put an upgraded, much bigger quality one to handle it.
What about the stabilizer bar?
You had an upgraded one, so it's going to be a little bit more stronger to cater for the suspension, the weight, and all that.
We've got a roof load.
All that too.
Handling.
And then the CVs, these CVs were actually seized on here. You normally knock these off, and when they seize on, you almost got to cut them. So your shaft.
What do you mean by seized on? They wouldn't come apart.
They wouldn't come apart. So normally, you could. There's a little slip, and you can knock the CV off, and you're left with the shaft. Now, what we look for in these shafts is, again, these splines to see how much wear is on there.
Right.
We look at this seal. This is still quite good here.
Yeah.
So what they would do is, if they wanted to sacrifice the CV and the shafts are still very good, you'd never keep this as a spare, but as a spare for a workshop to help someone, you'd have to cut these off if you can't get them. So you literally got to.
The general condition of them was?
It's so difficult to tell until you actually wash them all out and strip them down, because generally when we do this, we'll pull the CV apart, which means all the balls come out. We can then look at the surfaces and look to see if it's severely worn. And normally what you'll see on CVs is that sometimes the balls have lost their case hardening, and sometimes actually in the CV itself you'll see that the grooves have lost their hardening and they've started to wear through. And there's a lot more play on the CV. When you hear someone going around a corner, tuck, 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 it's not so. We didn't hear anything like this, but certainly on a CV you don't want to risk it if there's play in the CV. So Terrain Tamer do a whole kit which came with the shafts and the CVs all pre-greased in a way, so very nice to fit. What we did find, and we've got one there too, this is what we found on the rubbers that were completely, and you can see there's the bottom area worn
right
away.
Through, all the way one way.
Right through. So not the top section.
But this is not a Toyota bush either.
No. And again, the bottom section worn, So it's fine to change, bushes. You want to use good quality. Too harder bush isn't good either, because then it can actually wear on the steel itself. And too softer bushes isn't good. So you've got to understand what bushes are available. There's some good aftermarket bushes, but generally, the aftermarket suspensions are designed to carry more weight in the vehicles, and the bushes equally will be designed. And some of the bushes are designed with a very nice crosshatch, like a cut inside, so it traps a bit of grease, which helps with lubrication. Yeah, so I think with what's been done on the vehicle, the first phase was to do the mechanical. So generally when we take a vehicle in, we either buy a new or used vehicle. The new vehicle, we don't need to do the extent of changes, maybe a few upgrades that we know work. But with your vehicle, phase one is always, let's get a line drawn under the mechanical work, because then we can budget going forward. We know the mechanical work is going to cost money. We don't quite know how much until it's all pulled apart. Generally, we'll pull it all apart, inspect it, make our decisions of what can and can't be used based on where the person's traveling, and then full quote, so we can go and explain it to the client. This is what we're changing, this is why we're changing, and these are the couple of options you've got. And then build it all up, and of course then test it, which is what you've done.
I've done,
That's critical.
So we've basically finished that part now.
Yeah, I think phase two would be then designing what are we putting on the car, exterior, What's the interior going to look like? It's the fun part. That's the part that's actually, I would say, probably one of the toughest, because you're managing expectations. I know you, I know how you travel, and many of my clients I don't, so understanding your needs is very important, so we get that right. And it is the fun part for me, because building an interior is like building a home and creating your home, and I want you to love this Troopy more than any other Troopy you've ever had. So I've got a personal challenge to actually give you the Troopy that you're going to love the most.
No easy task.
Yeah, it's no easy task. Anyway, it's been good fun.
It's been fantastic. So in the next videos, we will be starting the interior design, build, and the actual building itself, of course, will be done while I'm home in Australia, and you're going to, so I'm basically going to hand it over to Paul, but then we're going to keep communicating, and the videos ahead you will actually be witness to our communication, and then the design development that's going to take place here. I've got somebody documenting it with us, so we're going to share the whole lot and leave nothing out. So make sure you press that little notifications bell. There's so many of you commenting on my videos saying, you don't do this. And I did. You're missing it. You have to press the little bell and tell YouTube to send you a notification that the videos come up. Because if you don't, YouTube is hopeless. They don't know that you like my shows. Okay, you have to tell them that you know. So they know and send you, So. And I think it's the only solution if you're missing videos.
I'd just like to say a personal thank you to you for coming out, trusting us with building your vehicle, and to our great team in each of the businesses we're working with who've actually contributing to this build. I mean, the amount of time that has been put in a very short space of your time.
Especially here, 1 week to do that.
It was a week turnaround, a team to strip the vehicle down.
So I should probably say, if you're a client, don't ask for a week, because you're going to be told, forget it.
You won't get it.
Don't say, but you did it for Andrew. Yes, because we were filming it and we had a limited time. So they did an amazing job for a week.
With Sneyman 4x4.
And no comebacks and no issues on the car. No. That's amazing.
And when we gave the gearbox to Cape Transmissions, and we said to Alaric, we need it, he built gearboxes and diffs in, I would say, a couple of days. As a kind gesture with a lot of extra time.
So a lot. I think he worked nights.
Thank you guys for the support we've had, and to Terrain Tamer for all these parts. It's made and it makes a build exciting, fun, and a pleasure to be able to share some of the information, which I hope we all benefit from.
Lots more to come on this build. See you next time.
Cheers. Bye.